What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over the dynamics module in Ozone 7. Uh, this is really like the cat's pajamas in Ozone. You have your 4 bands up here, and you have a compressor and a limiter for each band. So it's a very tight dynamics control for 4 separate bands on your master bus, which, in my opinion, is exceptionally exciting and sounds pretty cool. So let's start off with one band. I'm going to hit this little negative symbol here. So now we have our one band, and it's right down here. It's purple. It's great. We have our limiter threshold up here. We're going to play with that a little bit later. And then we have our compressor right down here. This is actually your threshold. So when audio goes above this, it will reduce by a matter what's dictated by the ratio of the compressor. The attack is how fast it takes for the gain reduction to occur, and release dictates how long it'll take for the gain reduction to go back to normal. The knee, it controls the range. The knee is right here. It's how hard the compressor will hit, depending on the amount going over the threshold. You have your detection, so it'll detect the peak, which is anything that goes above this will get squished. It'll get compressed. Your envelope, which I don't really use, but it takes apparently the average level of the incoming signal, evening out across all frequencies. So it kind of doesn't detect the single band. I assume it detects all bands, and it detects the envelope. So the kick will affect the blah blah blah. RMS is the level, the average level. So root means square. So it's not necessarily the peak, it is the average. And RMS, I wouldn't use that often. RMS, the RMS mode of detection is great for vocals, which are very dynamic. So it just kind of, it's a very smooth compressor. It rides the compressor a little bit. So now that I think of it, RMS might be useful on basses that tend to, you know, like move around a lot. You might want to just experiment. So let's get into, yeah. So you have your attack release, and then your knee, and then you have your parallel. So this is wet and dry. So this is parallel compression. So this is like how Justice makes their records. They use a compressor as an effect. So you listen to Cross, the whole thing is parallel compression. It's extreme compression mixed back in with the uncompressed signal, right? It's also called New York compression and a few other names. Yeah. So this is, yeah, band 1, purple. And you have your adaptive release, which it depends on the length of the transient. Yeah, compressing release automatically adapts to the incoming signal. So what this does is it prevents pumping from occurring. Pumping in like sidechain compression is desirable, but overall you don't want pumping to occur. Pumping occurs when like the release is a little too slow. You want the release to automatically adapt to the incoming signal. These plugins are very smart, and they take a lot of time to adjust, I guess, the linearities of your release. Your release is very important. Your attack is very important. Your attack preserves, it dictates how much of the transient is preserved or not preserved, and the release dictates whether the sound is like pumping, and you can, the pumping effects on your master do not sound that pleasing. Auto is left off because you're trying to do dynamic control. By all means, you can have an automatic gain compensation. So whatever is being reduced by your compressor, you'll compensate that automatically by hitting this button to adjust the gain, and the gain is adjusted dynamically, um, making your mix sound louder overall, but you might not want to do that. It's off by default, but it is there. It's off by default. You want to bring that up with your vintage limiter or your maximizer at the end. You want to reduce the overall sound, smooth everything out with this plugin. So let's add in. Let's just drag it back in. So now we have our 4 bands, and we can select them right here. We can hit all to see them all in a handy dandy graph. But let's just focus on this view just for the sake of simplicity. So again, we have 4 bands, each represented by a compressor and a limiter, and we can solo each band. This is obviously low end up into the 140 hertz range. Right, okay, so. Right, so audio is going into all bands. Let's go to, where the bass and everything will drop in. Right, so we already have some gain reduction going on here because the compressor by default is at, I guess, 12 dB. So yeah, you wanna kind of reduce the compressor, like you want to kind of reduce the bass a little bit, because what I find, like personally, like I've heard my songs on like loud systems, the bass is always a little bit intense and a little bit, if I don't do this, it's a little bit flubby. It'll, like, the bass is always there. You want the bass to just kind of hit a little bit. So, I'll have the attack open so it preserves a little whoop. Now, lower frequencies are different. They're longer wavelengths, so you want to kind of, play around with it. And this is, I'll just give you an example. I don't know what I'm doing until I do it. So basically, less is more, and I can see my readout here. Right, and you can see the adaptive release happening. And it kind of makes it sound a bit natural. And it's way better to have a little less bass than you can. It's way better to have a little less bass than you could have compared to having way too much, like for clubs and stuff like that. So let's move on to the next band. This is only like brief examples. Usually I would have like a reference track down there, but yeah, I might do that in a subsequent addendum to the tutorial. We're gonna move on to the next band, which would be, like a mid bass to in like kick and a bit of the lead. Yeah, you want just a little bit of gain reduction going on. We can completely obliterate the transients because the dynamics processor in Ozone 7 has 0 milliseconds attack, which I think is important to point out. Right, so we have no dynamics now, and right now it sounds just kind of unnatural. Oh, oops. Right, it sounds a little too thin, so you got to kind of be careful. You wanna get a balance. And you can click this to see the readout. Maybe that's a little too much compression. And the reason why we're doing this is because I do not want the maximizer and the limiter to work too hard. I want to even some stuff out. The highs, what I like to do for the highs, because the highs are very dynamic because you got white noise and stuff like that, I want a limiter, right? So when you go above a certain amount, it's just a very fast limiting. So what I can do is I can actually double click on that. And now the limiter and the compressor are now one being. Right, and I'll set the ratio to the compressor down here, 1:1. Right, so now there's a compressor here, compressor here, but there is a limiter here. I don't want to mess around with the dynamics too much on the high end because that's not what I'm really into controlling right now. I want to make sure that it doesn't go above at any point in the track. I don't want it to go above a certain amount, and that will, prevent ear fatigue, and you won't get it, it won't be a pain in the butt later. Same thing here. Maybe not so much because this is going to be high pass later on. Again, that's a different kind of video. But I want gentleness, right? And this is like the main part of the track. So this will like be the standard of loudness for all bands. These top two kind of guys here. Right, and I'll turn it on and off and you can kind of gauge what's going on. There's a little bit too much bass being taken out because when you change something in one band, it affects all the other bands. It's like a weird thing. It's an acoustic kind of phenomenon that happens. What I'm trying to do is smooth out the dynamics and create an overall balance. So we have that. Right. Very gentle, and then from there I'll add in maybe my post EQ and the maximizer, and I'll be able to achieve an overall loudness. Because yeah. Anyway, I want to show you something else. So I'll get rid of that, and then I'll drop it back in. If I didn't mean to do that, I can obviously go into the undo right here and change that. But I want to show you kind of a trick. So let's find. Okay, so we have this band here, and I want to do, instead of reducing the overall sound output after when it goes above the threshold, I want it to kind of boost the sound a tiny bit. So exactly the opposite. This is upwards compression, which I think is very important. So you kind of, I'll show you. So you can go down to, you'll notice, then we'll go 3:1, I guess. And then we'll have our compressor, we'll play with it. And then this is where the limiter is very useful. Oh. Right, so you see that green? The sound is being raised. And that's fun. So with that, you want to kind of play around with the release and look at the gain reduction meter here. Oh, which actually doesn't show it. That's neat. Because it's all by ear then. So you'll notice right now. Right, it's adding more kind of punch. And from there, we can bring the limiter down to guarantee that it does not go above a certain value. Right? It's all fun to play with. Anyway, I just want to show you that little trick. Hope you learn stuff. Take care and have a good one.